My name is Detective Marcus Lemaire, badge number 476, New Orleans Police Department, Homicide Division. I've served the city for 26 years. Long enough to know that some cases close on paper, but never leave your head. This one started in the spring of 2004, a week after the river flooded over Chopatulas, and the air smelled like wet plaster and old sugar cane. I was 41, 2 years divorced, and the kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep. My partner back then was Detective Rena Delcourt, 6 years younger, sharper eyes, and a sense for when people were lying that bordered on psychic. We were called out to a missing person in the Lower Garden District. A woman named Evelyn Broussard, age 28. Last seen leaving her shift at a bar on Magazine Street. The case file should have been routine. Adults go missing in this city every week, usually resurfacing after a bender or a bad breakup. But what set this one apart was the detail her co-worker mentioned. Evelyn had told everyone she was being followed, that a man in a beige raincoat stood outside the bar every night, smoking without ever lighting the cigarette. She'd even reported it once, but nothing came of it. That's how our involvement began. A standard welfare check for a woman whose paranoia might have been justified. We found her apartment on Prytania, one of those old shotgun-style homes cut into units. It was clean, organized, too much so for someone who'd been scared. Her wallet sat on the kitchen counter, next to a cup of half-drunk tea gone cold, and an unlit candle that looked like it had been burned down to a stub weeks before. The back door was locked from the inside, windows too, but her shoes, every pair, were lined neatly by the entryway. No sign of forced entry, just absence. The neighbors hadn't heard a thing except for the rain that came hard that night. We canvassed Magazine, interviewed her coworkers, ran her credit cards. Nothing. She'd simply stopped existing between clocking out and the time we arrived. No phone calls, no sightings, no cash withdrawals. The kind of disappearance that gnaws at you because it offers no shape to work with. Rena thought it might have been an abduction by someone she knew. I leaned toward a voluntary disappearance. People snap. They start over. The city swallows them if they want it to. But that theory didn't hold long. On the third day, we found Evelyn's car abandoned under the Claiborne overpass, door unlocked, keys gone. Inside was a single receipt from a gas station across the river, timestamped 2 hours after she left work. No security footage. Camera had been out for weeks. I remember standing under that concrete with water dripping from the seams above, the noise of traffic like muffled thunder, and feeling an unease I couldn't name. Rina said quietly, "She didn't drive herself here." I agreed but didn't say it. Something about the stillness inside that car felt deliberate. Over the next week, the case stretched thin. Tips came in, none worth the paper they were written on. Some claimed they saw her boarding a Greyhound. Others said she'd been seen near the levee talking to a man in a raincoat. We followed everyone, came up empty. Then, late one night, dispatch sent a call from a warehouse on Chopatulas. A security guard reported a break-in and mentioned the name, Evelyn. Said a woman had come to the gate, pale and barefoot, asking to use the phone. When he turned to unlock the door, she was gone. We drove there fast. The guard, a thin man in his 60s, trembled when we arrived. He said she looked soaked through, her hair matted like she'd been in the river. He swore he saw her mouth move, like she was whispering, but he couldn't hear her through the glass. She looked straight at me, he said, like she knew my name. We combed the area for hours, no sign of anyone. But behind the fence, near a drainage ditch, I found a single gold hoop, earring pressed into the mud. Her roommate later confirmed it was Evelyn's. That discovery kept the case alive, but it also deepened the riddle. No fingerprints on the fence, no footprints in the mud despite the rain. And the warehouse cameras pointed everywhere except the gate. Rena and I began to argue more often after that. She believed Evelyn was still alive and moving through the city, avoiding something. I started to suspect a stalker with deep familiarity. Someone careful, patient, maybe a former lover. We pulled phone records, questioned exes, even tracked a bartender she'd dated briefly. He had alibis stacked high and clean. The case began to soar, like milk left too long. By midsummer, it was cold. The department had moved on, media forgotten. But I couldn't shake it. I'd find myself driving through her neighborhood, passing her building at night, expecting some flicker of movement through the curtains. The porch light always burned out. The silence inside felt heavier than vacancy. It felt watchful. Then came the second one. August heat, another woman gone from the same area. Similar age and build. Her name was Colette Landry. Disappeared walking home from her shift at a diner near Jackson Avenue. Same patterns. No forced entry, no witnesses, shoes left by the door. Rena and I looked at each other when we read the report. Different names, same ghost. We worked that case like we were trying to redeem the first. Days blurred into nights. The evidence file grew thick with contradictions. Fingerprints that led nowhere. Cameras malfunctioning at the wrong hour. Witness descriptions that changed with each retelling. But the one detail that still wakes me at night came from a street vendor who swore he saw Colette at dawn 2 days after she vanished. He said she walked barefoot down Annunciation Street, eyes forward, lips moving as if reciting something under her breath. When he called out, she didn't turn, just kept walking toward the river. We searched the levee for hours, dogs and all, but found nothing except a beige raincoat tangled in driftwood. It was old, waterlogged, pockets empty. Rana lifted it with a stick and said, maybe she finally met him. I told her not to romanticize it. We bagged it anyway. Forensics later said it had traces of cheap tobacco inside the lining, but nothing else. That night I stayed in the office past midnight. The smell of burnt coffee and sweat heavy in the air. I spread both case files on the table, side by side, and studied the photos. 2 young women. Similar smiles, similar lives, both vanished without a trace but linked by fear. My pen hovered over the report and I wrote, possible serial pattern. Captain told me not to start panic without proof. Proof, in this city, is what the rain washes away first. I began keeping a notebook. Personal notes the department wouldn't log. Observations, things that didn't fit the official timeline. Like how both women had been seen at the same church in the weeks before they vanished. St. Genevieve's, near Coliseum Street. Or how both had reported a man smoking outside their workplace. Or the way each apartment smelled faintly of candle wax, as though someone had tried to cleanse it after leaving. Rena didn't like where my thoughts went. You're chasing shadows, she said one evening as we sat in the car. Outside the church, engine running, humidity fogging the windshield. We don't even know if he exists. I remember answering, he does. He's patient enough to let us prove it. We never saw him, of course. But sometimes, when I parked by the river after a long shift, I'd noticed the same pale sedan 2 blocks down, engine idling, headlights off. Every time I walked toward it, it would pull away, slowly, deliberately. Maybe coincidence. Maybe something else. The department officially closed the Brassard and Landry cases by 2006, marked unsolved. Rena transferred to missing persons soon after. I stayed in homicide. Career went on, new cases came, but the faces of those 2 women stayed tethered to my thoughts like weights. Over the years, I saw echoes of them in every new file. The same pattern of vanishing acts that ended nowhere. But there was one last connection I hadn't noticed until much later, the thing that made this case follow me into retirement. In 2018, 14 years after Evelyn Brassard disappeared, I was packing my office for good when an officer from Records dropped a box of old evidence on my desk, misfiled and marked for disposal. Inside, wrapped in clear plastic, was that same beige raincoat. The tag said, "Property of Case Feo 4, 1771. I lifted it out, still damp, smelling after all those years, and something fell from the inside pocket. A photograph, small, curled at the edges. It was a picture of me, standing outside the Brassard apartment the night she vanished. Face half turned toward the camera, unaware it was taken. On the back, in faint pencil, someone had written, "She saw you first." That's where the official record ends, but not the story. The department says the photo must have been filed in error, maybe a print from a journalist or a neighbor. But I've checked every angle, every report, every archived film roll. That shot doesn't exist anywhere else. And I've never been able to explain how it ended up inside evidence that had been sealed since 2004. People like to believe the worst thing about this job is the gore, the loss, the things you can't unsee. But what truly haunts you is what you almost see. The fraction of a second where something looks back. I used to think the city forgot Evelyn Brassard. Now I think she's still here. Somewhere between the noise of the rain and the silence of locked rooms, trying to tell me what I missed. And I know, deep down, that the man in the beige raincoat was never the one following her. He was waiting for me. After finding that photograph in the evidence box, I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I kept it on my desk under the lamplight, studying every grain, every shadow. The timestamp was burned into the border. Wine dined to 04:10:46 p.m., the night we canvassed Evelyn Brassard's building. I could even see Rena's silhouette in the background, talking to a neighbor. Whoever took it had been standing across the street in the dark, directly facing me. I went through every archive photo from that scene, every press credential, every freelance photographer who'd covered the missing person cases that year. None matched. The department's film rolls from that night were logged by a rookie crime tech named Jonas Hilly, who left the force in 2009. I tracked him down easily. He runs a bake shop now in Plaquemines Parish. He swore the picture wasn't his. I shot the stairwell, the kitchen, the back alley, he said. Nothing outside. If someone took your photo, it wasn't from our crew. His face went pale when I showed it to him. You sure that's the Brassard case? Because that's not the building we worked. That caught me off guard. I'd assumed it was. But when I looked closer, he was right. The house behind me in the photo wasn't the one on Prytania. The porch columns were wrong. Different molding, different address. I zoomed in on a street sign barely visible in the corner Camp Street. That was 3 blocks away, which meant the photo wasn't from the crime scene at all. It had been taken while I was leaving. The thought sat like a stone in my chest. Someone had followed me that night. Someone close enough to capture my face and hide the evidence inside the suspect's clothing. And for 14 years, that photo had been sealed away, waiting. I didn't tell the department. Retired detectives who start seeing patterns in old cases get politely ignored. But I couldn't let it go. The next morning, I drove back to the Lower Garden District. The Brassard building had changed owners half a dozen times. The porch was painted mint green now. Potted plants where the police tape once hung. I stood across the street, same spot where the photo must have been taken, and watched the light move across the windows. A woman watering her ferns looked up and asked if I was lost. I told her no, that I used to work a case here. She said she'd only moved in last year, but mentioned something odd. Every few weeks, someone left a white envelope on her porch with nothing inside. Always unsealed, always blank. She'd stopped opening them. I asked if she'd kept any. She said one might still be in her mailbox. She brought it out. Ordinary stationery, faint trace of old perfume. The postmark was smeared, but showed the first 2 digits of a ZIP code, starting with 701, the city's own prefix. Inside was a folded square of paper, blank except for a single penciled word, "Stay." I thanked her and left before she asked more questions. That night I pulled the Brassard and Landry case files out of storage in my garage. Dust thick as lint, but the handwriting was mine. Reading those reports again felt like walking into my own footprint. Both victims lived within 5 blocks of each other. Both worked night shifts. Both disappeared after telling someone they were being watched. And both left behind something unspoken. A sense that the story wasn't over. I found my old notebook too, the one I'd kept off the record. Inside, taped to the last page, was a torn slip of paper I barely remembered. A phone number, no name. I must have written it during the second case. I dialed it, half expecting it to be dead. After 3 rings, a woman's voice answered. Older now, but unmistakable. Rena. We hadn't spoken in almost a decade. She'd left the department years earlier. Remarried, moved out toward Baton Rouge. When I told her about the photo, she was silent for a long time. Then she said, "I'm not surprised." She explained that after transferring to missing persons, she kept seeing the same pattern. Women who vanished after reporting a stalker, all within the same rough area. She tried linking them, but her new captain shut it down. Too circumstantial, he said. No evidence. Eventually she gave up. But the disappearances didn't. Evelyn Brassard wasn't the first, she said. I think she was the one who noticed first. And that's why she disappeared. We met the next afternoon at a diner on St. Charles. Rena looked smaller, her hair gone silver. But her eyes hadn't changed. Still sharp, still too tired for their age. She brought a manila folder wrapped in string. Inside were printouts of police bulletins, missing person reports, dating from 1998 to 2010. 17 women, all under 30. All from neighborhoods within 3 miles of the river. I asked how she'd found the pattern. She said she hadn't. It found her. Each report had some odd detail omitted from the official logs. One woman's purse returned by mail, empty. Another's voicemail greeting replaced with static. A third's landlord finding candles arranged in a circle in her empty apartment. None of it made sense, Rena said. But look at this. She handed me a surveillance still from a liquor store camera dated 2009. A blurry figure in a beige raincoat, buying cigarettes. His face turned away, but his hands were gloved despite the summer heat. He shows up near at least 3 of the disappearances, she said. Always a bystander, always background. I studied the photo. Something about the posture tugged at memory. Too familiar. But what chilled me wasn't the man. It was the reflection in the store's glass door. A car parked at the curb. My own old department-issued sedan. Rhina must have seen my face. "You see it, don't you?" she said. I didn't answer. The odds of coincidence felt microscopic. Either the man in the coat had been watching me, or he'd been where I already was. I asked where she got the image. She said a friend in records owed her a favor. The store's CCTV had been wiped for unrelated reasons, but this single frame had been printed for an evidence test and filed under a different case number. "You were never supposed to see it," she said quietly. We left the diner before the lunch rush. Outside, the city felt heavier, slower. Thunderheads gathered over the river. I watched Rena cross the street, her folder clutched to her chest like contraband. She said she'd send me the rest of her notes once she was home. She never did. 2 days later, I called her number. No answer. Another day. Then another. On the 4th morning, a state trooper called me. They'd found Rena's car parked near a rest stop-off, I-10, driver's door open, purse and phone on the seat. No sign of her. The only thing left behind was a folded envelope on the dashboard, unsealed. Inside, a blank sheet of paper. I drove out there myself. The trooper on scene recognized me. Old habits die hard. The air smelled like cut grass and asphalt, baking under sun. The ground around the car showed no struggle, no footprints beyond hers. I remember standing there, thinking she knew this was coming. That night I went back through the photo again. The one from the raincoat's pocket. I laid it next to Rena's surveillance print. The proportions matched almost exactly. The same distance from the subject. The same framing. Whoever took them had been standing in roughly the same place each time. It wasn't random. It was ritual. I started mapping the locations of all 17 missing women plus Rena, plus the spots where the envelopes had been found. The pattern, once drawn, was unsettling. A loose crescent curling along the riverbank, each point no more than half a mile from the next. The line ended where the Mississippi bends near the industrial port. An area filled with abandoned warehouses and derelict piers. I knew better than to go alone. But I went anyway. The docks at night are a different world. Rats on the timbers. Diesel smell thick in your throat. Fog curling low over the water. My flashlight caught glimpses of graffiti, rusted rails, tire tracks leading nowhere. I followed the curve of the levee until I found an old warehouse with the windows bricked over and the door chained shut. A faded sign above read, G. Landry and Sons Freight. The name jolted me. Landry, same as the second victim. I cut the chain with bolt cutters from my trunk and stepped inside. The air was stale wet, carrying that same faint scent of candle wax. My beam passed over stacks of decaying crates, a table covered with water, stained papers, and at the far end, a wall plastered with photographs. Dozens of them. Women's faces, newspaper clippings, case numbers, sketches, and interspersed between them, photos of me, some recent, some decades old. Me at the precinct. Me at Evelyn's apartment. Me getting into my car last week. I don't remember moving. One moment I was staring, the next I was at the table, rifling through the papers. Many were blank. Others had single words scrawled across them: wait, follow, return. I heard a sound then, Metal scraping against concrete, faint but near. I turned off my light. Silence stretched, then footsteps. Soft, deliberate, circling just outside the door. I drew my gun, called out, "Police!" Old habit, even though I wasn't anymore. The steps stopped. I waited. Nothing. When I finally switched the light back on, the door hung slightly ajar. No one there. I backed out slowly, every muscle tight. The night air hit like a wall. By the time I reached my car, my hands were trembling so hard I dropped the keys twice. When I looked up at the warehouse, one of the upper windows, bricked from inside, had a faint glow behind it, like a candle flickering. I drove straight home, locked every door, and sat at my kitchen table until sunrise. By morning, the photos and papers were gone. I went back to the warehouse with 2 local officers. The place was empty. No wall of photos, no table, no candle scent. The chain I'd cut was intact again. They looked at me like I'd gone soft in the head. Maybe I have. But the map still hangs on my wall, pins marking each disappearance. The crescent line still curves toward the river. And when I stand there tracing it, I can feel it. Something unfinished, some presence waiting at the bend, patient as ever. The department can keep their records and their logic. I've spent half my life chasing a man who never left fingerprints. And maybe he's long dead. Or maybe he was never a man at all. Just an echo of what this city hides. Still, I can't shake the certainty that he's not done with me. Because last night, as I was locking up, I found an envelope under my door. No stamp, no writing. Inside, another photograph. Me again. Sitting in this very kitchen, taken through the window. On the back, in faint pencil, it reads, "She saw you again." I didn't call anyone about the new photograph. Who would I tell? The department would chalk it up to a prank. My ex-wife would say I'd finally gone stir, crazy, and the neighbors already looked at me like I kept corpses in the freezer. So I did what I've always done. Treated it like evidence. I laid it flat under the kitchen light, careful not to smudge the edges. The photo was new, printed on glossy paper. My kitchen clock was visible in the background, frozen at 11:43 p.m. the night before. Whoever took it had been outside my window while I was here, sitting in the same chair, reading the Broussard file. I checked the locks again. Every one was latched. Curtains drawn. I even measured the height of the camera angle. It had to have been shot from ground level, about 6 feet from the porch. Close enough that I should have heard something. I live in the Marini now, in a small brick duplex with a rusted balcony and a view of the corner store's neon light. The street's usually alive until 2 a.m., but that night I remembered it going eerily still. No music, no voices, no passing cars. I must have tuned it out. By morning, I had convinced myself it was a sick joke. Someone online, maybe. A troll who dug up my old cases and wanted attention. But when I walked outside, the first thing I noticed was the faint imprint of shoes in the soft dirt under the window. Barefoot prints, small, each toe defined. I stood there staring until the sound of a streetcar clattering down Royal broke the spell. I took photos, measured them roughly with my boot. Size 7, maybe a woman's. The ground was damp from a midnight drizzle, so the prints couldn't have lasted long. They led to the corner, then vanished into the sidewalk cracks. That afternoon, I went to see a former colleague, Detective Vincent Vin Moreau, who'd stayed on after I retired. He was working missing persons now. Younger guys calling him Old Guard. I showed him the photo. He laughed at first, then realized I wasn't joking. You think this connects to Brassard? I don't think. I know. He looked at the print again. 14 years later. And someone's sneaking around your house just to spook you. You're giving them too much credit, Mark. I didn't argue. But before I left, he pulled up a file from 2 weeks earlier. A new disappearance. Woman named Laura Pennington, 29. Last seen leaving a jazz bar on Decatur. Her roommate reported she'd been afraid of someone. Claimed a man in a beige raincoat was following her home from work. Vin shrugged when he saw my face. Could be a copycat. Happens. The city's full of stories. Man, Laura Pennington's case hit me like déjà vu. The address, the age, the complaint. It was all the same pattern repeating. I asked to see the evidence list. Nothing stood out, except for one note from the responding officer. Apartment smelled faintly of candle wax. That was enough. I left the precinct before Vin could stop me and drove straight to Decatur. The apartment building was a narrow, red brick structure wedged between a thrift shop and a tattoo parlor. Yellow police tape hung limp across the stairwell. The lock on her door was still broken from forced entry. Inside, the room looked staged. Clean, but not naturally so. The bed made too neatly. The windows polished. No dust on the nightstand, except for a single ring mark from a cup. The faintest trace of vanilla, scented candle wax lingered in the air. On the kitchen counter, a cheap lighter lay beside a half-empty pack of cigarettes. I don't smoke, but I lit one anyway. Let the smoke drift. It helped me think. The pattern had returned like a tide. The vanishings, the scent, the false stillness afterward. But now it was touching my life directly, bleeding through the years like an old wound reopening. I sat at her table, opened my notebook, and started writing down everything I remembered from the Brassard case. When I reached the line about the beige raincoat, I stopped. That coat had been filed under my custody for years, sealed, then somehow resurfaced in my retirement box. I'd returned it to evidence when I found the photograph inside, but now I wasn't so sure it had stayed there. I called the property room. The officer on duty said there was no item log under that number anymore. Might have been misplaced, he said. Could have been sent for disposal months ago. I hung up without thanking him. On impulse, I drove to Stain. Genevieve's church, the one both Brassard and Landry had attended. It hadn't changed much. The bell tower leaned a little. Pigeons nested under the crossbeam, and the doors stood open for weekday prayers. Inside, the light filtered through stained glass like bruised colors. An old priest recognized me. "Detective Lemaire," he said softly. "It's been a long time." "Father," I said. "You remember Evelyn Brassard?" He nodded slowly. "She used to light candles for her mother every Sunday. Sweet girl. The police never found her." I told him I thought someone might be repeating whatever had happened back then. He frowned. "I see candles go missing sometimes," he said. "People take them home for blessings. Nothing unusual." "Where do you keep them?" I asked. He led me to the back room, where shelves of votive candles lined the walls. Some burned halfway, others new. I lifted one. Its wax smelled faintly of vanilla. I turned it over. Scratched into the bottom, barely visible, were 2 letters ML, my initials. The priest must have seen my face. "Something wrong." I set it down carefully. "Do you mind if I take this one?" He hesitated, then nodded. I wrapped it in a paper towel and left, trying not to look like I was fleeing. That night, I placed the candle on my kitchen table beside the photograph. I stared at both until the light outside dimmed into storm gray. Then, against my better judgment, I lit it. The flame flickered weakly, then steadied. Vanilla filled the room again. Same scent from every scene. Every file, every echo of those women. I sat there watching it burn until I realized something strange. The flame didn't move, not even when I exhaled near it. The air around it was perfectly still. I leaned closer. The wax had begun to melt, pooling around the base. Something metallic glinted inside. I took a fork and fished it out. A small, rusted key, no tag, no number. I knew where it belonged before I even tested it. I drove back to the warehouse on the docks, the one I'd found empty. This time I brought a crowbar, flashlight, and my revolver. Rain began as I reached the gate, the same relentless drizzle that seems to haunt every bad memory. The chain was back again, unbroken. But the key slipped neatly into the padlock and turned. Inside, the air smelled of rust and damp stone. My flashlight beam caught fresh footprints in the dust. Barefoot again, leading toward the far end. The table was gone, but the wall still bore faint outlines, where photos had once been taped. I followed the prints around a corner into a small side room I hadn't noticed before. The door was slightly ajar, wood swollen with moisture. I pushed it open. A single chair stood in the center, facing the wall. On it sat a folded beige raincoat, freshly laundered, smelling faintly of vanilla wax. And taped to the wall above it, another photograph. Me again, standing outside this very warehouse, taken from the street only hours earlier. On the back, written in pencil, "You shouldn't have come back." I remember whispering something, though my throat was dry. Maybe it was a prayer, maybe a curse. I backed away, careful not to disturb anything. But as I turned, my light caught movement, someone standing in the doorway. A figure, tall, face hidden by the brim of a rain-soaked hat. Beige coat. The same one on the chair, or its twin. "Evelyn," I said before I could stop myself. The shape didn't move. Then, quietly, it spoke. "You've been looking in the wrong direction." The voice was low, genderless under the echo of the empty room. My finger tightened on the trigger. "Who are you?" It stepped closer, slow, unhurried. I could see now that the coat wasn't wet. It shimmered slightly, as if lit from within by the reflection. A flame I'd left burning miles away. When I raised the flashlight, the beam caught only dust. The figure was gone. I don't remember leaving, only that I ended up driving aimlessly through the city until dawn, the key still in my pocket. My mind looping that sentence over and over. "You've been looking in the wrong direction." By the time I returned home, the candle had burned down completely. The wax had hardened around the base, sealing the key's outline inside like a fossil. The photograph on the table, the one of me at the kitchen window, was gone. Now, 3 nights later, I can't sleep. Every sound outside feels deliberate. When I check the blinds, the street looks empty. But the reflection in the glass sometimes lingers a moment too long, like it's waiting to catch up. The file boxes sit open again. Cases that refuse to close. 17 missing women, 1 missing partner, and a pattern that leads nowhere but circles back to me. I keep hearing that voice in my head. Steady, patient, almost kind. "You've been looking in the wrong direction." And I think I finally understand what it means. The women weren't being followed. I was. The night I realized I'd been the one followed, something in me broke loose. Years of logic, procedure, All that detective discipline I'd built like armor, it cracked. I sat in my living room with every light on, blinds drawn tight. The files spread out on the floor like a crime scene. The pattern wasn't about Evelyn Brassard or Rena or the others. It was about me. Every woman who'd vanished had crossed paths with me somehow. Some as witnesses, some as names on reports I'd written. Others I'd just passed in a hallway once. I hadn't seen it because I never thought to look at myself. I kept replaying that voice in the warehouse. You've been looking in the wrong direction. It wasn't a threat. It was a correction. That night the phone rang at 2:11 a.m., the kind of hour that only brings bad news. I answered on instinct. Silence first, then faint static. A breath, just one. Then a woman's voice, a Detective Lemaire. It wasn't a question. "Who is this?" I asked. No answer. Then, "He's behind you." I spun around so fast the receiver hit the wall. No one there. The house was empty. Quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I pressed the phone to my ear again, but the line was dead. Caller ID showed nothing but my own number. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was a prank. Maybe some twisted trick from someone who'd read about the old cases online. But when I stepped outside to clear my head, a car I didn't recognize was parked across the street. A dark sedan, windows tinted black. It idled there, exhaust curling faintly in the damp air. I watched for a full minute. No movement inside. Then it rolled forward, slow as a funeral procession, and turned the corner. That's when I stopped pretending I wasn't in danger. I drove to the department, not to report it, but to pull favors. The security guy at the back entrance, Andra, owed me from years ago. He let me into archives after hours. I combed through the Brassard case again, looking for anything I might have missed. Every photo, every note, every word I'd written. Then I found something buried in a folder. I didn't remember creating a typed statement from a witness named Harold D. Cantrell. No such name appeared in the official log. The statement was dated 2 days before Evelyn vanished. It read, "He watches them leave. Always from the opposite side of the street. Says he's taking notes." I asked his name once. He smiled and said, "Marcus." I felt my pulse hammering behind my eyes. Someone had forged that, used my name. Or maybe they'd been using it all along. I went to records to see if the file had a physical signature. The clerk on duty said that box was long gone, transferred to storage off-site. I asked where. She checked her computer and said, "That warehouse on the river, the old Landry and Sons facility." I left without a word. By evening, the clouds had gathered again, heavy and low, turning the city into a dim aquarium of light. I drove aimlessly for a while, circling the French Quarter, every street half familiar, half foreign. I didn't want to go home. Didn't want to see that candle or the photo. But I couldn't stay out forever. When I finally pulled up to my duplex, I noticed something small and white tucked under the wiper blade of my car. I almost didn't touch it. An envelope, unsealed. Inside, a photograph. Taken from a low angle, maybe from the sidewalk. It showed me inside the car, just seconds ago, hand on the wheel. Someone had been there while I sat watching. On the back, the faint pencil again. "You finally see it now." I tore it in half, then into quarters, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I went inside, locked the door, and shoved a chair under the handle. I sat in the dark. I tried to think like a detective again. Strip out the emotion, just focus on evidence. Whoever was behind this had access to police storage. Old case files, my personal address. That meant insider or former insider. Someone who knew procedures, maybe a retired officer, maybe even someone I trained. The thought made my stomach tighten. At dawn, I drove to Rena's old apartment, the one she'd kept before she vanished. The landlord remembered me, let me in after some persuasion. The place was still empty, but I noticed something strange near the window. A square patch on the floor, slightly cleaner than the rest, as if a rug had been there for years and recently removed. When I knelt down, I saw a faint outline burned into the wood. Candle wax stains. The same pattern as before. I pried one of the boards loose. Beneath it, wedged in the gap, was a small cassette tape, the kind used for voice recorders back in the early 2000s. Labeled only B19. I found an old player at a pawn shop 2 blocks away. When I pressed play, static filled the room. Then a voice, mine. Lemaire, Detective Marcus. Interview, March 16, 2004. Regarding witness Brassard Evelyn. My younger self, recorded at the precinct. But the next voice wasn't hers. Detective, a man said. Calm, steady. You're looking for her. You won't find her. Not until you stop looking at them. What the hell does that mean? My own voice snapped. It means you've already met. The tape clicked off. I rewound it, played it again. Same voices, same ending. But I'd never recorded that interview. There was no Harold Cantrell, no such tape in evidence logs. Whoever had done this had imitated me perfectly, or found recordings I didn't remember making. That night, I brought the tape to Vin. He listened once, then twice. His expression turned wary. You sure this is your voice? Yes. He scratched his jaw. Could be edited. Could be AI. Could be anything, man. Don't do this to yourself. But when I asked him to pull the case transfer records for the Landry warehouse, he went pale. There are none. That site's not listed as storage anymore. It's condemned? Since when? Since 2010. So who the hell told the clerk it was there? He didn't answer. That night, someone knocked on my door. 3 times. Sharp, slow, evenly spaced. When I checked through the peephole, no one was there. I stepped outside with my gun drawn. Empty street, wet pavement reflecting the glow from the corner store. Then I saw movement at the far end of the block. A figure in a beige coat walking away, not hurried, just steady. I shouted, "Police!" Stop, even though I wasn't anymore. The figure didn't. I followed, boots slapping puddles. The rain started hard, warm and fast. The figure turned into an alley, and when I rounded the corner, it was gone. Only a line of wet footprints led deeper between the buildings. Barefoot, small, same as before. The alley ended in a chain link fence. Beyond it, the river glowed faintly through the fog. And hanging from the fence, at my eye level, was another photograph pinned with a nail. It showed the alley itself, taken seconds before I arrived. My silhouette already visible at the entrance. The next morning, I turned everything over to Vin. Photos, tape notes. He promised to look into it, though I could tell from his eyes he wouldn't. He thought I'd cracked under pressure. Maybe he was right. But when I got home, the chair I'd wedged under my door handle was moved. Just a few inches. Enough to show someone had been inside. I searched every room. Nothing missing, nothing added. Until I checked the bathroom mirror. Written faintly in condensation, as if from a breath, were 4 words. He's still behind you. I wiped it clean, sat down, and realized I'd stopped shaking. Fear burns out eventually, replaced by something quieter, resolve or madness. I decided it didn't matter which. I returned to the dock warehouse the next night, for the third time. I didn't bother calling anyone. The place looked deserted, but the lock was gone entirely, door ajar. I stepped inside, gun drawn. The smell of wax was stronger now, clinging to the air like perfume. My light passed over a new arrangement on the floor. Candles in a circle, unlit, and in the center, a single photo. It was Evelyn Brassard, smiling, alive by the look of it, maybe a recent photo. She was standing in front of St. Genevieve's Church. Written beneath in faint pencil, he found her. A noise came from behind me, a floorboard creak, close. I spun, light sweeping across darkness, catching a glimpse of movement. A man's outline, tall, coat shifting. "Don't move," I shouted. He didn't. I stepped closer, the beam narrowing on his chest. He was holding something, a camera, old-fashioned, film style. He raised it slowly and took a single photo. The flash blinded me white. When I could see again, he was gone. The sound of the shutter still rang in my ears. I ran outside, scanning every corner, but the street was empty. No footsteps, no engine noise. Just rain, relentless and familiar. When I looked back at the warehouse, I noticed something new on the door. Fresh pencil marks. Words I hadn't seen before. "You're in the picture now." I don't know how long I stood there, staring at it. Long enough for dawn to break and the city to start waking. I haven't told anyone since, not Vin. Not the department. The tape, the photos, the candle, they're all in a box now under my bed. I keep telling myself to destroy them, but I never do. Because deep down, I think he's still watching, waiting for the moment I stop paying attention. And part of me needs to know what happens when I finally look straight at him. I stopped pretending sleep could help. 3 nights since the warehouse, and my pulse hadn't slowed once. The clock ticked, the city breathed, and every creak in the house made me reach for the gun. I kept the blinds closed but left the lights on. Darkness made me feel like a photograph waiting to be taken. By dawn, I decided to turn the chase around. Whoever he was, cop, stalker, ghost in the system, he wanted me off balance. I'd spent half my career reading predators. The way they circle, test boundaries, savor the fear before closing in. They always think control is power. The trick is showing them you can take it back. I started with the envelope he left on my windshield. The photo was torn to shreds, but I'd kept the pieces. I reassembled them with tape, just enough to see the background behind my car. A row of cracked columns, chipped white paint, graffiti tags I recognized from the underpass near Chartres Street. That narrowed it down. If he'd been there long enough to take the shot, maybe he'd left something behind. I drove out just after sunrise. Traffic still light. The city damp and quiet. The underpass reeked of piss and mildew. Pigeons scattered when I parked. My breath fogged in the heavy air. The ground was littered with bottle caps, cigarette butts, burned out candles. The cheap kind from the church supply store. And near one of the pillars, a wax ring fused to the concrete. Still warm. He'd been here within hours. I crouched beside it, fingers grazing the edge. In the center of the ring sat a small metal object, half melted. Another key. This one newer, brass. The number 406 etched faintly into it. I knew that number. It belonged to an old precinct evidence locker. Long decommissioned when they moved buildings. The locker room was in the basement of the old NOAP headquarters on Broad Street, now used for city storage. I drove there without thinking. The guard at the gate barely looked up when I flashed my old badge. Habit and confidence opened more doors than authority ever did. Inside, the building smelled of dust and chemical cleaner. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I found a stairwell to the basement and descended into the stale cold of Dessous. Rows of metal lockers stretched into shadow. Most had rusted shut, numbers worn off. But near the back, I found 406. The lock slid open like it had been waiting. Inside lay a single cardboard box, unmarked except for a thin layer of dust. I pulled it out, set it on the bench, and lifted the lid. Photographs again, but not of victims. Of me. Decades of them. Some from crime scenes I'd worked. Others clearly taken without my knowledge. Me walking into the precinct, standing at a gas station, talking to Rena. The most recent was dated 2 days ago, timestamped 10:46 p.m. The angle through my kitchen window. A tape recorder rested beneath the stack. I pressed play. Static, then a voice, familiar, flat mine. Detective Marcus Lemaire, follow-up interview. Case file 04-1771. Then another voice, low, calm. The same one from the first tape. You see how it ends now? My recorded voice replied. Steady. I see how it started. Then you know what you have to do. End of tape. I sat there for a long time. The smell of mold in my throat. The key, the photos, the voice. They all led back to one question I'd avoided since the beginning. What if he wasn't following me? What if he was using me? Every lead, every visit, every time I reopened the case, it had pulled him closer, let him in further. I'd been reconstructing his ritual step by step, like a detective chasing his own shadow. A noise broke the thought. A footstep in the hall above, then another. Slow, deliberate. I turned off the recorder, pocketed the tape, and drew my gun. The air vibrated with the faint hum of the lights. Whoever was up there wasn't trying to hide. I climbed the stairs one at a time, silent except for the pounding in my chest. At the top landing, I saw him through the cracked door. Beige raincoat. Same tilt of the head I'd seen in every blurred photo. He was standing under a flickering light, camera hanging from his neck. Turn around, I said, aiming dead center. He didn't move. Now. He lifted the camera slowly, lens catching the light, and pointed it at me. The flash went off before I could react, blinding white. My ears rang. When the light cleared, he was gone. The echo of his steps moved toward the exit. I ran after him, boots hitting concrete. But by the time I burst outside, the street was empty except for a single white envelope lying on the hood of my car. Inside was a photograph. Me, gun raised. Caught mid, yell at the stairwell door. On the back, closer. That word kept looping through my head as I drove aimlessly through the quarter. Scanning faces, alleys, reflections. Every window felt like a lens, every shadow a frame. The city itself seemed to be photographing me. By nightfall, I couldn't take it. I called Vin, told him I had proof, that the guy was real, that he was escalating. He told me to stay put and wait. You're not on the job anymore, Mark, he said. Let us handle it. But the line clicked dead before he finished. I sat there, phone buzzing in my hand, and realized the dial tone was gone. Silence. I tried calling back, but there was no signal. Then, faintly, the phone clicked again. Static. And from the speaker, my own voice whispered, "You're almost there." That broke something in me. I grabbed my jacket, gun, flashlight, and the tape recorder, and drove straight back to the river. The streets thinned out as I crossed into the industrial district. The air smelled of wet metal. I parked near the laundry warehouse, engine running, headlights cutting through the fog. The door hung open now, wide like a mouth. I stepped inside. The candles were burning this time, arranged in that same perfect circle. Wax dripped onto the concrete in steady rhythm. In the center stood a chair, empty except for a photograph resting on the seat. I knew what it would be before I picked it up. It showed me entering the building just now. My stomach turned, but I couldn't look away. I lifted my head, scanning the shadows. "Where are you?" From the dark came the faint click of a camera shutter. I spun, flashlight beam slicing through dust. Another flash went off behind me, then another. My heart hammered. The flashes came faster, bouncing off the walls like lightning in a bottle. I fired once, twice, gunshots deafening in the concrete chamber. The flashes stopped. The smell of gunpowder hung thick. I called out, "Show yourself." No answer. I stepped forward, gun trembling. The candles flickered, shadows dancing along the walls. Then I saw something move, a shape crouched behind a stack of crates. I kicked one aside, gun ready. There he was. Tall, pale, eyes sharp as glass. The beige coat was open now, and I could see the camera hanging from his neck, lens cracked by a bullet graze. He wasn't armed. He was smiling. "You shouldn't have looked back," he said quietly. "Who are you?" "You know." "Why me?" He tilted his head. "You started it. You watched first." My grip faltered. "What the hell are you talking about?" He raised the camera again, one hand steady despite the damage. "Say cheese." I fired before he could press the shutter. The shot echoed, the sound swallowed by the river's hum outside. His body jerked, stumbled backward, hit the floor. The camera shattered beside him. I approached slowly, every nerve screaming. The pool beneath him spread dark and slow. He didn't move. The light flickered, candles trembling as if exhaling. Then, from somewhere deeper in the warehouse, another camera flash went off. I turned toward it, but there was no one there. Just another photograph nailed to a support beam, still curling at the edges from the heat. I walked closer, dread sinking in. It was a photo of me kneeling over the body, and beneath it, written in pencil, "Now you're the story." I dropped the gun. My ears rang with nothing but the river's heartbeat outside, and for the first time, I understood this wasn't about killing or saving or even watching. It was about documenting, preserving, whoever he was. He'd built something that didn't end with his death. When the police finally came, called by someone who'd heard the shots, they found me sitting on the floor, staring at the camera fragments. I told them everything, or tried to. They searched the building, found no other prints, no photographs, no body. Just a single empty chair and a circle of melted wax. Vin showed up hours later. He looked at me the way cops look at broken things. "There's nothing here, Mark," he said quietly. "No one. No blood. You need rest. But I know what I saw. I know I pulled the trigger. And I know that when they took me outside, the crowd gathered behind the police tape wasn't full of faces. It was full of cameras. Every lens pointed at me. Every flash going off like applause. They left me sitting in the interview room for 3 hours before anyone said a word. The walls were the same dull gray. I'd stared at half my life, but they looked different now. Like they were closing in. The mirror on the wall felt too dark. I knew the trick, of course. Two-way glass, camera behind it, microphone under the table. I'd interrogated hundreds of people from this side. Never thought I'd end up on the other. When the door opened, it wasn't Vin. It was a young detective I didn't know, barely 30, crisp suit, too calm. His name tag read Benoit. He set a recorder on the table, clicked it on. "Detective Marcus Lemaire," he said, voice flat. "You mind if I call you detective?" Force of habit. I didn't answer. He sat across from me, folded his hands. "You reported a shooting last night at the Landry warehouse on the river. Claimed an unidentified male was inside, armed with a camera. You discharged your weapon twice." "3 times, I said. He nodded. "Right. 3. Patrol responded within 10 minutes. No body found. No blood, no shell casings. I picked them up," I said automatically, then realized how that sounded. "Why?" He watched me. "So you admit you shot at someone, but you can't prove anyone was there." "He was there. I saw him. He had the same coat, the same camera. He's been following me." Benoit leaned back. "Sir, you retired in 2018, correct?" "Doesn't matter. It might. The property owner of that warehouse filed a complaint about break-ins 2 months ago. There's no record of anyone else on site. You sure you didn't imagine this?" I slammed my palm on the table. "I didn't imagine it!" He didn't flinch, just wrote something in his notebook. "You said his camera went off. Did you recover it?" "It shattered. I saw it." "Then where is it?" "They took it," I said, nodding toward the mirror. "Whoever's behind this, he's not working alone." Benoit glanced toward the glass, then back at me. "Who do you think he is?" "Exactly." I hesitated. The word felt wrong now. The figure in the coat, the voice on the tape, the camera flashes. It had always been there. Always adapting. "He's the one who started it," I said quietly. "The one behind the disappearances. The Brassard case." "Yes." He looked puzzled. "That case is nearly 20 years old." "Then maybe it's taken that long to come full circle." He studied me a long time before turning off the recorder. "You worked homicide a long time, Lemaire. You know how this looks. Like I'm losing it." "I didn't say that." "No, but you thought it." He gave a faint shrug. "The mind plays tricks when it's been in the dark too long." I leaned forward. "Detective, I have evidence. Photos. A tape, it's all real." "Where is it?" "In my apartment." "Box under the bed." He nodded. "We'll check." 2 uniforms escorted me out, sat me in the hallway while they processed the room. I watched through the window as Benoit bagged my clothes, my gun, my hands still smelling faintly of powder. Everything about it felt backward, like watching someone else's life fall apart in real time. Vin finally showed up an hour later. He looked older than I remembered, lines carved deep around his mouth. "Jesus, Mark," he muttered as he came in. "What the hell happened?" "I told you," I said. "He was there. I shot him." Vin rubbed his face. "They found nothing, man. No prints, no camera, no body. Just an empty building and you with a gun." "He was there," I repeated. "I want to believe you," Vin said, softer now. "I really do. But you've got nothing but ghosts and stories. And they're talking about holding you overnight for a psych evil. They think I'm crazy." He didn't answer. I leaned in close, checked the box under my bed. "The photos. Bring them here." Vin frowned. "What tape?" "The one I gave you last week. From the Rena case. You said you'd look into it." He stared at me blankly. "You never gave me a tape, March." "Yes, I did." "You said you'd have forensics run it." He shook his head slowly. "You didn't give me anything. And Rena's been missing 10 years. I sat back, stomach dropping. You're lying, he sighed. You know I wouldn't. 2 officers came in then, whispering to Benoit. He nodded, then turned to me. Detective Lemaire, officers executed a quick search of your residence. We didn't find any tapes or photographs. No envelopes, no wax, nothing under the bed. That's impossible, I said. You're looking in the wrong place. Wood checked everywhere. They're gone because he took them. Vin raised a hand. Mark, stop. Don't you see? I said, voice shaking. That's the point. He leaves nothing. That's how he's done it all these years. He takes the evidence. He erases it. Benoit exchanged a look with Vin that I knew too well. The look you give someone circling the edge. They left me alone again. The hum of the air vent was the only sound. I stared at the mirror, knowing there were eyes behind it. Maybe his among them. After a while, the light above me flickered, buzzed, and went out. The room went dark. Hello, I called. No response. Then a soft click. Like a camera shutter. My chest went cold. I turned toward the sound, but it came again, from the other side this time. Flashless, invisible, but there.
Turn the lights back on,
I shouted, pounding the table. Now! The door burst open. Benoit rushed in, flicked the switch. Light flooded back. No one else in the room. What the hell are you doing? He snapped. There was someone in here. No one's been near this door, he said. You're alone. I looked around. The mirror reflected my own face, pale and slick with sweat. No other movement. No camera. They ended the interview after that. Took my gun, my badge, my phone. They said they'd keep me overnight for evaluation. Vin tried to argue for me, but got nowhere. I was led down the hall to a holding cell. A room I'd seen from the other side too many times. The door shut with a heavy finality. The hours bled together. A guard brought coffee, then took it away untouched. The light overhead hummed, flickered. Somewhere down the hall, a drunk sang softly to himself. I tried to focus on the noise. Anything to drown out the whisper of that shudder in my head. Close to midnight, footsteps approached. The slot in the door opened, and Vin's face appeared, lit by the hallway glow. I talked them down to 24 hours. He said, "You'll be out tomorrow." "I'm not staying that long," I said. "You don't have a choice, Mark." He hesitated, looked around, then slipped a small envelope through the slot. "Found this in my car," he said. No idea how it got there. I tore it open. Inside was a photograph, grainy, black, and white, shot from above. It showed me sitting exactly as I was now, in the cell, staring at the door. On the back, in faint pencil, smile. "Where did you find this?" I asked. Vin's face tightened. "On the passenger seat. No prints." He started to say more, then stopped. His eyes shifted slightly, like something behind me had caught his attention. His mouth opened, but no sound came. "Vin." He blinked hard, then forced a smile. "Get some rest," he said, and he was gone. When the hallway light faded, I sat there staring at the photo. My own eyes in that picture didn't look afraid. They looked resigned, almost waiting. Now, as I write this on the scrap of paper they let me keep, I keep hearing footsteps outside the cell. Slow, even, measured. They stop at my door, then move on, then back again. Sometimes I hear a faint metallic click, like a lens focusing. There's no camera in here. I've checked every inch. But the air feels charged, like a flash about to go off. I don't know how he's still doing it. Maybe it's not him. Maybe it's the story itself, finishing what he started. All I know is that when the guard makes his rounds tonight, he'll see the light flare through the cell window. And in the morning, there'll be another photograph. This one taken from the hallway. Of me. They let me out just after dawn. No charges filed. Just paperwork full of blanks and a warning to get some rest. I walked out of the precinct without saying a word. The morning air felt thin, the city muffled, as if sound itself hadn't woken up yet. A photographer across the street lifted his camera, saw my face, then thought better of it. The flash didn't come. Vin was waiting by his car. He offered to drive me home. I told him no. He didn't argue. He just looked at me the way people look at something they've already decided to let go. "You need to sleep, Mark," he said. "Let it die." But that's the problem. Things like this don't die. They wait. I walked home along the river instead. The water moved slow, heavy with silt, the kind of current that can smell anything and keep it. The smell of wax was faint in the air, or maybe just memory playing tricks. By the time I reached my block, the sun was up proper, streetlights shutting off one by one. The door to my duplex was unlocked. I'd locked it, I know I had. Inside, nothing was touched, nothing missing. But on the table sat a small brown envelope, the kind the department used for evidence. My name was written across it in neat pencil. Inside was a single photograph. Me sitting in the interrogation room the night before. The lighting matched exactly, even the coffee cup on the table. But this one was taken from my side of the mirror, not the observation room. On the back, "We're still developing." I burned it over the stove. The paper curled slow, the image blistering before it blackened. The wax smell returned, thick and sweet. That was 4 hours ago. I haven't heard from Vin since. I've left the lights off now. Feels pointless trying to hide when the dark's already in the walls. I keep telling myself to stop writing, to walk away, but I can't. It's the only way left to make sense of it. Here's what I know. Every missing woman from the Brassard case shared one detail in common. Each had filed a minor report in the weeks before they vanished. Complaints about being followed, small vandalism, strange mail. Each report ended up on my desk, however briefly. I touched every one of their files. That's how it began. I opened the door. He followed the paper trail. I used to think he was a man, a stalker with a camera, obsessed with the idea of recording fear. But now I think the camera was never his. It was the thing using him, the act itself. The lens, the click, the moment of capture. You spend enough time chasing faces through photographs, and eventually the gaze turns around. We called them victims. Maybe they were just subjects. Maybe I am too. I keep circling the same thought. What if every picture he left wasn't taunt or warning, but sequence? Each image documenting the story's next frame, pulling me further in, until I wasn't the detective anymore. Just another character to be cataloged. That's what he meant by "you're in the picture now." I told Benoit and Vin the truth. They didn't believe me. Why would they? There's no proof, no body, no negatives. The only evidence I ever had exists in photographs that vanish once they're seen. It's perfect containment. Self-erasing. Still, something's changed. When I went into the bathroom earlier, I caught my reflection in the mirror. For a moment, the background didn't match. My reflection was sitting, not standing. The angle wrong, the light off. It blinked half a second later than I did. Then it sensed again. Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe sleep deprivation is painting ghosts on the glass. Or maybe the story's doing what it always does, developing the next frame. I poured a drink and went to the window. The street outside was empty except for a woman walking her dog. The leash glowed under the early sun. Ordinary, harmless. But when I blinked, the leash disappeared, and the woman kept walking. I don't know what's real anymore. That's not confession. It's observation. The mind fills gaps when it's missing pieces, and mine's full of holes. Still, I can tell you the difference between hallucination and intention. Whatever's happening, it's precise. It chooses what I see. I checked my phone earlier. The last call in my history isn't from the department or VIN. It's from my own number again. Timestamp: 2 minutes after I was booked last night. The voicemail is blank for 10 seconds. Then a faint hum, like film rolling through a projector. At the end, a single word whispered close to the mic frame. I haven't deleted it. I listen to it every few minutes, waiting for something new to appear. It never does. If this ends up in someone else's hands, if they find this notebook after I'm gone, I need the record to show I didn't imagine it. I followed evidence. I followed procedure. The rest followed me. Every pattern leaves residue. Even erased photographs leave light scars on film stock. Maybe that's all this is. The residue of something too old to die, replaying itself through whoever looks long enough. I keep thinking of Evelyn Brassard. Her smile in that last photo, the one I found at the warehouse. She didn't look scared. She looked relieved. Maybe she'd understood before I did that the only way out of the picture is to stop resisting it. There's a Polaroid camera on my table now. It wasn't there this morning. Looks old, 70s. Maybe same model we used for crime scene stills back in the day. There's one sheet of film inside. I should throw it out. I won't. The manual crank is stiff. My hands won't stop shaking as I write this. If the photo comes out blank, maybe that's mercy. If it doesn't, if it shows something, then at least the story's almost done. I keep catching flickers at the edge of vision, like someone stepping out of a frame I can't see yet. The air feels heavy, expectant. The candle scent is back, faint but constant, hiding under the smell of coffee and dust. I think of that last word written on the wall at the warehouse. Now you're the story. I understand it now. It wasn't warning, it was instruction. When the lens turns on you, the only control left is how you stand in front of it. So this is me, standing still. If anyone finds this, don't reopen the Brassard file. Don't request the negatives. Don't look for the missing. The moment you do, you'll feel the same thing I did. The shift in the air, the weight behind your eyes. That's when it starts focusing. Tell Benoit he was right about one thing: the mind plays tricks in the dark. But sometimes the dark plays back. The Polaroid sits beside this page. I haven't pressed the button yet. Part of me wants to know if it's loaded. The rest of me already knows it is. The light outside's changing now, yellow bleeding to white. Somewhere a camera shutter clicks, faint but certain. Maybe it's just memory. Maybe it's him. Maybe it's me. Either way, the frame's closing.